ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and of course, alleged human beings. Welcome to the channel. I'm Cap. This is my place. For those of you who are returning, welcome back. And for those of you who've never been here before, welcome in. It's time for this month's cooking tutorial. You new folks, cooking tutorials are mainly intended for those folks who have found themselves on their own for the first time and are unprepared to fend for themselves in the kitchen, whether you're in your first college apartment or you've lost a domestic partner who did all the food prep. Please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section down below written as if you paid attention in class, and click the notification bell. Doing all those free for you things helps tell YouTube to push the video out to more people. Now, before we get started, an important fact about the human digestive system, so make sure you're ready to write this down. If you stretch your digestive tract out in front of you in a straight line, you'll die. Let's get to the video.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the kitchen for this month's tutorial. This month we're going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the care of your wooden cutting board. Seen a couple of studies out there that seem to indicate that you're better off using a wood cutting board than plastic. The plastic cutting boards harbor more bacteria, and although you can just go ahead and chuck one into the dish machine if you have one, that's if you have one. And of course, since this tutorial series is meant for those of you who are either in your first college apartment where you may not have one, or for those of you who have lost a partner for one reason or another, again, you may not have one. So the first thing about wood cutting boards is they don't go in the dish machine, again, if you have one. They're laminated together. In other words, strips of wood are glued together next to each other and clamped, and once the glue is dried, they're run through a planer to make them flat. Well, the dish machine subjects them to hot wash water, somewhere in the neighborhood of 190 degrees Fahrenheit, and then subjects them to the steam in the drying process, because there's a drying cycle. And all that's going to do two things. One, it's going to serve to soften that glue and cause it to delaminate. And the other thing it's going to do, and we'll give you a close-up of this on the counter in a second, it's going to cause, maybe you can see it, yeah, you can see it. It's going to cause it to warp. And if we come up close here, you can see where I had put this in the dish machine and it's cracked. The juices from various kinds of meat run through those cracks, and guess where it ends up? All over my kitchen counter. On the other hand, this one, it's pretty flat. And that's because this one's never been in the dish machine. Now here's the thing. It's wood, and you have to care for wood. The other thing that makes these wood cutting boards superior to plastic, at least in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people that I know who worked professionally in kitchens, is that as the edge of the blade encounters the grain of the wood, it can settle into the wood instead of encountering a hard, unyielding surface. The best cutting boards out there are the ones where the end grain points upwards and is the work surface. That's called a butcher block. What that means, and let me grab a sheath for a knife. So let's pretend this sheath is the blade of the knife, and my fingers are the end grain of the wood. the edge of the knife blade will go like this into the edge grain, and it won't dull your knife as fast. So what do we do to care for our wood cutting board? Well, first, we'll get rid of this one. First, when it's dirty, take it over to the sink, rinse it and use a scraper as soon as you can once you're done using it. That'll prevent things like chicken and pork and fat from those two or even from beef from sticking to the surface. That'll cut down the amount of work you have to do on it. Can you use hot water on it? Yeah, absolutely. You do need to use some hot water on your cutting board. Go ahead and put your dish detergent right on the surface. Get a scrubby. One of these. And use that with some hot water and make little circles on there and just get it all cleaned off. Once you do that, you need to oil the surface of your cutting board. That's right, I just said oil your cutting board. Now, when I say oil your cutting board, I mean with some sort of oil that's safe to consume. Canola oil is an excellent example of a less expensive oil that's safe for human consumption because we cook with canola oil. Do not, I see in comment sections all over YouTube people saying, well, gee, I could probably do that with mineral spirits. No, absolutely not. Mineral spirits are toxic. They're not safe to eat. They don't go on your cutting board. You also don't use varnish, shellac, or any of that kind of stuff. It's not safe to eat. Now, because I'm an idiot and I went to the grocery store without my list, I didn't get zucchini, which I was planning on doing for you guys this week, nor did I get a small bottle of cheap canola oil. And that means we're gonna use olive oil. I'm using olive oil to do this. I can't believe that. Look, folks, olive oil is fine, but olive oil, 3 liters of olive oil is $32. Okay, imagine if a gallon of gasoline was $32. So that's why you use canola, sunflower oil, any of those cooking oils that you might use to fry an egg. That's the kind of thing you want to use. So we're going to take the camera off the tripod, move it down here, and I'm going to briefly show you how to do this. We're not going to do the whole thing because it can be time consuming, but you're going to get the general idea. All right? Okay, everybody, this is the surface of our cutting board. You can see here how the strips of wood were glued together. The grain runs this way, and all we're going to do, again, I can't believe I'm using olive oil for this. We're going to pour a small patch of olive oil on here. And we're going to rub it in. You're going to do this to the entire surface. Now, when do you need to do this? Every time you've washed it? No, not necessarily. But you'll see how, as I do this piece of wood goes from being kind of gray to having a nice kind of golden color to it. When your cutting board starts to look gray, it's time for you to re-oil the cutting board. And one of the things this is going to do is it's going to make this last a lot longer. One of the questions you might ask is, hey, putting a food product on there, does that mean I need to keep it in the fridge? No. This is cooking oil. to olive oil. Olive oil doesn't go in the fridge. Neither does canola oil or any of those other kinds of oils that we cook with. What happens if you put that in the fridge is they solidify. They turn into a waxy substance and they won't pour until they come back up above about probably 60 Fahrenheit. So that's as much of this as we're going to do. I'm going to shut the camera off, put this aside, and then we're going to get ready to make a steak here on the stovetop because it's miserable outside. And you can do a steak on the stovetop without having it turn gray. We're going to talk about that and make a nice rare steak, maybe a little bit towards medium, in 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, we're back. The cutting board's put aside for the oil to soak in. Now, as always, utensils first, then ingredients, then the cook. Utensils that we need. Obviously, we need a pan big enough for the piece of meat that we're going to eat tonight. For utensils, a fork is okay because you're going to have to turn this over, or grill tongs. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. You're going to need a butter knife. And of course, you're going to need a dish, some sort of plate. For ingredients, obviously the steak. We're going to use two other things. We're going to use garlic salt, and we're going to use some butter. The final thing that we need a spoon. Because how else are we going to get the butter up on top of the steak? Okay? Now, steak is unique among the meats that are commonly eaten here in the US because it's okay to let it hang out on the counter for a while to come up close to room temperature. You can't do this with pork and you can't do this with chicken, but steak is all right. So what do we got today? Well, it's T-bone. It says USDA choice. Unfortunately, I'd like to be able to say that that's not really that expensive, but these days it is. Everything is expensive. Just because this is one piece of meat doesn't mean it has to be consumed all at once. Now, how are we going to prepare this? The first thing we're going to do, guys, we're going to put some garlic salt on this, and we're going to let it sit while we cut our butter and let the pan come up to temperature. You don't need all kinds of fancy rubs. Even in commodity meat, there is some care taken in the way the animal was raised. It's going to taste good. And you want to be able to taste the meat itself. You don't need to put a lot of garlic salt in there, because again, you're not covering the flavor. All you're doing, and I'll bring this up, all you want to do is put some garlic salt on here, both sides and the edges. And what we're doing is we're helping to bring out the naturally existing flavors. We don't need to cover that up. The second thing, like I said, I prefer my steak on the rare side. Rare runs from 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 125 degrees. I'm going to suggest to you that the steer that went into making this steak is already dead. You don't need to kill him twice. So at 120 degrees and up, we are killing the stuff that may live on meat that's been packaged. So if you want to go higher than that, go ahead. There's no reason to go to a well done where the entire inside of the steak is turned gray. The steer gave himself up so you can eat dinner. Don't insult him by ruining it. So I'm gonna get the butter cut. I'm gonna bring the pan up to temperature and we'll get started. All right, everyone. You can see I've swirled my butter around here in the bottom of the pan. It's all melted. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put my steak in here. Now, the most important thing that you can do right now is run a timer and leave it alone. You have to let the meat sit there on the heat. It's the only way you're going to develop any color in it. You can go ahead and you can cook a steak and constantly move it around, and it'll just turn into an unappetizing looking gray chunk of meat. Now, I like 2 minutes to 2.5 minutes, depending on how thick the piece of meat is, before I turn it over. I'm not going to make you sit here and wait the entire time. I'll turn the camera back on once I've turned the meat over so you can see the results of leaving it alone. All right, everyone, my timer's gone off. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over. And in that 2 minutes, I'm going to reset my timer. We started to get nice color, just like we would if we were on a gas or charcoal grill. Now, one of the reasons people tend to overcook steak is they see a red fluid that leaks out of the meat and they think it's blood. It's not blood. If you've got meat that you purchased at a grocery store, it's been drained very thoroughly. If there's blood in it, there's some blood still maybe in the large bone. That's going to get cooked out. What you're really looking at is a substance called myoglobin. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more butter here. Oops, that's all right. Myoglobin is a protein in meat. That's not going to come out of there. I'll have to get a rag later. Anyhow, myoglobin is protein. It's normally a clear protein, but when we expose it to heat, the way we're doing right now, it turns red. And a lot of people, like I said, a lot of folks mistake that for blood. And they go, oh, that's gross. No, it's good. It's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the spoon and we're going to spoon the butter, and the juices, including the myoglobin that are coming out of the butter, out of the steak, onto the top of the meat. There we go. And this is going to be delicious and tender. The timer's gone off. We're going to flip this back over. We're going to turn it a little bit so it's on a different part of the pan. And I'll bring you back when this guy has reached cooked the desired level of doneness that I prefer. Be right back. All right, everybody, we're back. Now, based on my experience with my cooktop, a piece of meat about this thick, 3 cook cycles per side should give me a steak that's just a little bit past rare. I'm going to pull this off. Now, what do we do now? Do we cut into this right away? Well, no, we don't. Why is that? Well, 2 things. First of all, we've pulled it off so it can rest. Because right now, even though it's not in the hot pan, it's still cooking. The other thing that allowing a piece of meat to rest will do is the muscle fibers in this piece of meat are going to relax. If we were to cut into this right now, any of those nice flavorful juices that are in here will run out all over the plate. And they'll still be delicious, but they'll be delicious when you sop them up with a piece of bread or use a spoon. The meat, however, will end up being dry. So we're going to let this sit here, and I'm going to go ahead and make some vegetables, and then we'll see you in a minute. All right, everyone. We've got our steak, we've got our veg, because after all, a healthy green vegetable has to get into our meal because it's a healthy green vegetable. I've got all these drippings here, the butter and the juices from the meat. I'm not going to let that go to waste. I'm going to go ahead and pour that in here. It's going to be delicious. Anyway, go ahead, get yourself a little experience with your pan and your cooktop. Don't forget that when you pull the meat off, it is still cooking. So pull it off a few degrees early. Again, rare is 120 degrees Fahrenheit to 125. It's your food. You cook it the way you want it, as long as you cook it past that 120 degrees. So we'll see everybody next month for another kitchen tutorial, weekly for scheduled videos, and whatever weird stuff pops into my head the rest of the week. Thanks for watching.